How do we know what we know about turfgrass science? Welcome to Turfgrass Epistemology. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Turfgrass Epistemology. So glad you can be here tonight. We're going to have fun. In this episode of Tinfoil Turfgrass, we are going to explain a little bit about iron, manganese, magnesium. We're going to show how some raw materials in those blends are useful. Most of the raw materials in granular micronutrient blends are not useful. I'm going to explain how to do that. We have a turf thought at the end of the show tonight. And I'm also going to describe and explain the difference between chelates and complexed nutrients. A friend of mine came by today, or whenever it was, a couple days ago, and was asking about that. And it just so happens that in one of the articles tonight, I'm going to show what a complex metal looks like on a molecular level and explain what a chelated element would look like as well. Okay. So look forward to all that tonight in this episode. Thank you all for being here. There's already quite a bit of people in the chat. I see a lot of questions about iron, so that's good. That's one of my little babies that I, for some reason, am fascinated about. And let me just address one or two questions here before I get started. Or just comments, I guess there it was. Yeah, Aziz says, anyone paying more for chelated iron like Feature 600 because of expensive concrete and avoiding staining, I'm afraid to use non-chelated iron. Lots of new concrete. Yeah, sulfated iron will stain everything that it touches. It doesn't matter what it is. And believe me, I've tried. I've tested it on wood, tested it on PVC, concrete, clothes, boots. I've tested it on a lot of things. And I've shown some of those pictures on the channel, actually. And it's going to stain everything that it touches, and it's going to do it less than an hour. It's going to do it very quickly. So if your priority is non-staining, you have a lot of new concrete, it's super white, new developments, whatever the case is, and you want, for some reason, you want to apply iron, liquid iron to the grass, you're going to need to go with a more expensive chelated iron source. And it may not necessarily be something like a glucoheptanate or something like a citrate. Those, well, at least citrate, tends to be less staining. But the glucoheptanate will still stain. And I'm going to show exactly why that is tonight. But if you get to EDTA or the EDDHA or DTPA that are chelates, those have very little ability to stain. They're going to protect that metal. And the reason why glucoheptanate and, to a lesser degree, citrate can stain is because those aren't chelated ions, or they're complexed ions. So, and I'm going to explain the difference between the two tonight. So you will greatly reduce your chances of staining using something like citrate and potentially using glucoheptanate, but you're still going to have some staining risk there for sure compared to sulfate. So I would not go with iron sulfate. I don't even know if iron sulfate's in the Feature 600. I think Feature 600 has chelated iron in it, I think. I know they've changed the guaranteed analysis over the years, so I don't know what's in it nowadays, but I want to say it's EDD or EDTA or EDDHA. I can't remember which. So you might be safe with that. The best thing to do is probably do a 2 or 3x concentration of it in a little spray bottle and just spray it on some unnoticeable concrete, like in your backyard or on your driveway or something you don't care about necessarily, and see if it stains at like 2 or 3x. That's probably what I would do. Some of the members here have already helped your question, Aziz. So yeah, manganese sulfate does the same thing. Iron sulfate, anything that's not protected like a manganese or an iron will stain. Those are the two you're going to want to care about the most, because those are the two you're probably going to be applying the most. When you apply magnesium does not oxidize like iron and manganese will. So magnesium sulfate will not stain concrete, but you probably don't need to apply magnesium sulfate anyway. So the two that you probably need to apply are iron and manganese, and those two will stain. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Oh yeah, Mason. Oh man, I'm so glad you guys are here. I get so involved. I forget to ask everybody to do this. Like, subscribe, join, buy some merchandise. Yes, there is a merch store, by the way, that has all sorts of goofy shirts and crazy stuff, and all that revenue, which I don't even know. There's only been a few people buy anything, but all that revenue goes to support the channel and it goes to support Turfgrass research. So thanks so much for reminding me there. I always forget to ask people to do that. Yeah. And Alex Zamora says that he uses iron sulfate and manganese sulfate for foliar applications. I like living on the edge. Yeah, those two products will definitely turn some grass green, the liquid applications. And those are the least expensive methods to apply iron and manganese to turfgrass are iron sulfate foliar and manganese sulfate foliar. But they will stain. So just got to be careful how you do it. Okay. So yeah, just be mindful. And if you're a member, don't forget to go into the members comment section in the post, a couple posts down. There's a little recommendation for those people who are members. You can see what you can do to help notify me that you have a question in live chat. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let me Eric Gomez. I don't have a shirt that says that. It says I want to buy a shirt that says these micros are even more micro. Yeah, I should. That's a good shirt idea. I should create that. That's a good one. Yeah, I don't have a shirt that says that. So, well done, Eric. Thank you. All right, guys. Let's get on with the show. Okay, this episode of Tinfoil Turfgrass comes with thanks to a channel titled Ron Henry. Now, for those of you who don't know Ron Henry has a show. I think it's on Friday nights. He goes for a couple hours. He's a salesman. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of my friends are salesmen, but he's also a grifter. He likes to sell things that aren't useful. It doesn't matter to him whether they are or not. He just wants to get your money. And some of them are useful. Some of them aren't useful, and this episode tonight is a perfect example of that, where some of what he says is valid and useful. Other parts of what he says is a complete con job, and he is gaining revenue from that. And so we want to try to help Ron out by educating him a little bit tonight on what exactly he's saying and why it's not true, and maybe he can become a better salesman. Who knows? So let's get started. And the title of this is How to Get a Green Lawn Fast, 3 Easy Tips for Quick Results. This is only 8 minutes. The video is only 8 minutes, but we do have some research. I'm going to reinforce what I'm asserting tonight with research and explain, and hope use that to explain exactly why I'm convinced that what he's saying is complete BS. Okay? At least some of it. Here we go.
Are you looking for advice on getting your lawn as green as possible? If so, you clicked on the right video. Coming up, I discuss the 3 key areas that you need to get right for the greenest possible lawn. Let's get started. Hey YouTube, welcome to Project Golf Course Lawn Season 5. So how to get the greenest lawn possible. Everyone wants a super green lawn, and you'll see all kinds of conflicting advice on the best way to get it.
Yeah, that's no joke. That part is true, Ron. So that is probably the most true thing I've ever heard you say. There's a lot of conflicting advice on how to get it. That is definitely true. It's really not particularly complicated as long as you have quote unquote normal conditions. It's when you don't have normal conditions and you're trying to troubleshoot the problem is where a lot of these con men find an opportunity to get in and sell you a mountain of product to solve your problem. When in reality, there's no realistic probability that would ever happen with the products they sell you, unfortunately. And I can go by experience with the number of some subscribers and even some members of this channel have personally communicated to me how much money they've wasted with products that they buy from YouTubers that they were convinced that they would work because look behind Ron here. His lawn looks great. Oh, he has a perfect lawn. His lawn looks great. So clearly he must know what he's talking about. When it comes to the labels, when it comes to how to sharpen your reels or how frequently to mow and things like that, Ron's pretty good about that stuff. I mean, the basic stuff, he has some decent advice. When he ventures over into this is how it works, this is how nutrients work, this is what's going to function, that's when he goes off and complete BS left field somewhere. And that's what we're going to go over tonight. But he's definitely right. There's a lot of conflicting advice. Oh, I was going to show the pyramid. In fact, let me just put it on the only way I can do this without pulling up half of creation here is to show the pyramid of evidence or the pyramid of risk. Can I put this on the screen? Yeah, this little, that's as fast as I can do it. I have to pull up PowerPoint and all sorts of stuff to get up, but there's a little pyramid that I use to describe the risk factors associated with turfgrass quality and growth. Now, at the bottom of that is water, and then it's light and temperature, and then injury, and then fertile soils is at the top. So water is the most common risk factor. And he's going to talk about water. He's going to talk about injury. He doesn't talk about it directly, but I'll explain. So two of the things he talks about is spot on. Is when he goes into soils, and for some reason, it's almost always soils. I don't know why. Everybody's generally okay with their advice and recommendations on the water. They don't really venture into light and temperature because there's not a whole lot you can do about that anyway. But then in injury, those are things like sharpening your blades, mowing frequently, all these things, right? And pest control, those things are in the injury box. Everybody generally seems to be in the realm of reality in that. It's when people on YouTube venture into soils, and even some professionals venture into the world of soil fertility, is when all hell breaks loose. It just goes completely into the dumper. And it's amazing how inaccurate the information is. It's rare that I come across any information that is accurate in that box at the top of the pyramid, which is really the least common risk factor that I run into. Okay. But he's right about that. There's a lot of conflicting advice. We continue.
So in this video, I'm going to cover 3 key areas, the 3 things you absolutely need to get right for a greener lawn. And they're really not as complicated as you might think. The first...
Well, I agree. They're not as complicated. This is not complicated. It's the same thing as playing the piano or carpentry or playing the bass or playing football or something, whatever you're good at. Your daughter might be a soccer player or whatever, and whatever you're really, really good at, it's easy to you. You do it in your sleep. But the average person is not really, really good at baseball. They're not really, really good at pitching sliders, okay? But some people are. And so to them, it's easy, but to the average person, it's not. So that's kind of why this channel is here. And that's the loophole. That's the niche that a lot of these YouTubers have found their way into, is that the average person is not familiar with it. The average person doesn't know that they're completely full of BS. These YouTubers selling them every sea or stone on the planet. They're not. They know, the YouTubers know that, and they developed some products, and they started making some money on it. And they go, well, heck, I'm making money on this. I can make a living on this, selling nonsense, selling BS. And it's because generally the average person doesn't know. I don't know hardly anything about anything on the planet except for this one little world of soil fertility. That's it, and it's just in turfgrass fertility, and that's even more, minute of a slice. So what I'm getting at is, it's really not particularly complicated, but I get it if you're not familiar with these topics. So that's why this channel exists, to kind of help provide some evidence-based information. But it's really, really straightforward and basics. And that's what that pyramid on the screen that I have right now is. That's intended to simplify things down. We can talk about soil fertility. We can talk about potassium, and we can talk about iron. We're going to talk about that tonight. Manganese, we're going to talk about that tonight. None of that means squat to me, who's a specialist in soil fertility, unless you have the water optimized first, the light and temperature issues, you're aware of that and you're managing that properly, and the injury box. All that has to be done first. Why? Because that's almost always the problem first, long before you ever have any issues with iron or manganese or magnesium or pH or anything like that. Okay, so that pyramid is intended to simplify things. Let's not make it overly complicated is where I'm going with that. Let's keep it simple, straightforward, the basics of blocking and tackling, the basics of turfgrass agronomy, and that's water, light, temperature, injury, and then we can talk about fertile soils, okay? Oh, yeah, real quick, I got to put that on the screen. Thanks so much, Super TA. Appreciate the $5 donation, yeah. I got to remember to put those on the screen. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Every day I show up, I always look forward to it, but I'm always surprised that anybody's here. Like this morning or yesterday morning, the pro member YouTube, the pro member channel, The pro member episode was on, or I'm sorry, the member episode was on yesterday morning. I'm sorry, can't speak tonight. And I got on, and there was nobody waiting. Sometimes there's people waiting. There's nobody waiting. I'm like, okay, that's what I would expect. There's no one here. But then certain people come in, 10, 15 people show up. There's always people here. I'm always surprised. So I really appreciate that. Super tier, the chat there. And I would put, I can. And Chuck Benzing, you have a tendency to gift these memberships. I don't know how you do that, but it pops up on my screen. I really appreciate that, Chuck, gifting a membership. And you gifted it to Brandon Clifford. So Brandon Clifford, you can thank Chuck Benzing for your membership. And Brandon, you can go check out some of the videos under the members only. There's 20 or 30 videos now just for members. And there's a whole lot of posts in the posts that are only available to members only. Sorry. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. Back to the show.
That you really need, and the thing that most people do a lot of that really doesn't do a whole lot towards getting your lawn green is watering. So if you
what he said it doesn't do a lot. What did he say? Some people that does not help a lot.
Really doesn't do a whole lot towards getting your lawn green is watering.
Well, what does he mean by that? Watering doesn't do a lot to keep your grass green. Then turn your water off. Turn your water off in Arizona or Southern California, and have something other than Bahia grass or buffalo grass or something like that. Turf's probably going to look pretty bad for a while. We never had any irrigation in Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma and we had Bermuda grass. We didn't have any irrigation there. Grew, but in the summertime, when it got dry, it looked horrible. I don't know what he means by it doesn't help the greening. Without water, there is no nutrient uptake, period. That's just reality. You must have water. So proper water management is absolutely critical. It's the number one thing you should spend your most time on is optimizing the moisture level in your soils. There is nothing more important than that. You really can't control the light. You really can't control the temperature. You can control some other things, but the injury in the past, you can control that. But all that stuff is inconsequential, irrelevant compared to water. I don't know what he means by that.
So if you're looking at a lawn like mine, which is a Bermuda grass lawn, it's a hybrid Bermuda. Bermuda only really needs about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week. That's all that this lawn gets. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. Yeah, he's right on that. An inch is probably more than enough for Bermuda grass, depending on where you're living and what time of year it is. If you're living in Southwest Texas and you're expecting a 9 on the Turfgrass quality scale, then you're going to need more than 1.5 inches. But the majority of Bermuda grass that's grown, 1 inch of water a week is enough. He's correct about that.
I have not watered my lawn in quite a while because we've been getting rain regularly every week here in Georgia, so there's just really no need for it. But that said, you want to make sure that you're getting, for a warm season grass like Bermuda, 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water on the lawn per week. Yeah,
we've been going over water on the channel. So 1 inch and 1.5 inches is in the ballpark, but you wouldn't want, as an average sort of generic number, I'm okay with that. Just keep in mind that you would want to keep an eye on the weather. Like if it's going to rain 1 inch that week, then you don't need to irrigate like he's mentioning. You can also go to the reference evapotranspiration areas, the maps. In fact, I did one the other day at NOAA, I think it's NOAA.org. I had an episode all about how to go find reference ET in your area for this week or for last week, and you can see how much the evapotranspiration has been. And generally speaking, it's about 0.09 to 0.13 inches a day, something like that. And you add it all up, depending on the time of year, and it's somewhere around 1 inch. And so he's right about that. But if you want more specific information on that, you can find that. And I use the map at NOAA, and you have to go back and look at that episode to get the exact address.
So that's first important. You don't want the lawn to get so stressed that it turns brown, because the lawn turning...
Well, yeah, you're right. I don't know what he was saying. I don't know what you said earlier on where it's not that important. Now you're saying it's important. Yes, it's important.
Brown is a stress response. If you're dealing with drought conditions, the lawn's going to turn brown to preserve nutrients, to preserve its health so it can continue to live. So making sure you're getting at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water on the grass weekly at least, especially during drought conditions, is going to go a long way towards a greener lawn.
Yeah. Did I misunderstand him earlier when he said it? Did he say it was important? And I thought he said it's not important. Maybe I misunderstood him. I apologize if I misunderstood him at the beginning of the show. I thought he said it doesn't go a long way. Maybe he said it does go a long way. because now he's saying it goes a long way. It's weird. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But basically, he's right. Yeah. So when the turfgrass senses it's stressed from moisture stress, it will start to curl its leaves up. The first response to moisture stress is the turfgrass will close its stomata and roll its leaves to reduce evaporation, reduce transpiration through the leaf. That's the first response. When that happens, it's not a big deal. If water comes the next day or within a day or two, it's going to open it back up its leaves and it'll grow fine. In fact, in the morning, it'll probably have its leaves open, and in the afternoon, it'll probably close its leaves. That's all normal. It's when you start to leave those leaves rolled up and the stomata closed, and the plant can't cool itself by transpiring water through it, that the plant will start pulling nutrients back into itself to survive, basically. And when it starts doing that, it starts consuming essentially, or pulling back in the nutrients. That's when you see the color get pulled out of the leaves. So he's right about that. I'm just adding to it, is that he's correct. But if you see the color change in the turf, that's many, many times past the incipient water stress signs of leaf curling and stomatal closure. That is a physiological change in the plant that takes days to start to form, and that means it's been dry for a little too long. And to recover from that is not simply applying water and you see it come back in a couple hours. It's going to take several days to come back from something like that, maybe even a week to come back from something like that, okay?
And the second, and the thing that I see a lot of people getting wrong, is mowing height. So the thing is, when you look at grass, really only the upper third typically of grass is green, right? Normally only that upper third of the leaf. So if you're mowing your lawn excessively short, like if you're cutting it really short, then that's gonna contribute to the lawn not being green, because really, remember, that upper third is what's really green, and if you're cutting it super low, you're cutting off that green spot that's really just the green leaf that's really just exposing the stalk of the grass, which is brown. I mean, the grass is still okay, but it's just not going to look very green. It's going to look kind of unsightly.
Yeah, for the most part, he's right. Yeah, I mean, for your particular grass, you need to figure out what the recommended cutting height is and stay within that recommended cutting height unless you have a good reason to move out of it. So in my world, and I have turf type tall fescue, I keep that cut at about 3 inches. I'd cut it higher if my automower cut higher. So I just cut it as high as I can. And I've said this, cut your lawn, whatever grass you have, cut it as high as you can. That would result in an acceptable quality lawn. So I had 419 in Florida. I mowed it with a 1600 reel mower, and I think the max on a 1600 is 750, but I was able to fidget with the rollers. I think I got it up to like an inch because I wanted to grow it as high as I possibly could. You can cut that thing down to 250 probably with a 1600. I don't know what the lowest, depending on the bed knife, I don't know how low you can cut it with a 1600, but I was like, well, why would I want to cut it that low? I don't need to. It looks fine to me at 3/4 or a 1 inch. So cutting it lower and lower and lower imparts more and more stress on the plant. So why do that unless you need to in order to result in some quality or some expected outcome? If 1 inch is okay, then leave Bermuda grass at 1 inch, all right? So if tall fescue is okay at 3 inches, leave it at 3 inches. Don't lower it to 2 inches or 1 inch. You're just reducing its photosynthetic capabilities and imparting more and more stress. Before I forget, I'm in the middle of a massive thunderstorm right now. And if the show suddenly gets cut off, it's because I lost power and it won't be back on. Just letting you know.
So mowing your grass at the correct height with the correct equipment regularly is a big part of having a green lawn between mowing. So what you'll often...
Yeah, he's dead right about that. Absolutely correct. Yeah, if you're gonna have a lawn like what he has behind him, you're not cutting that once a week. I'm guessing he's cutting that at least as low as 500, half an inch. That's pretty low. It's tight. He's probably got some PGRs on that grass. I mean, it's a beautiful lawn. It's got it striped up. That's tight. And there is no way you're going to get it to look like that at that cutting height, mowing it once a week or once every 10 days, especially without a PGR. In other words, it's going to be growing so fast. If you cut it once a week or once every 2 weeks, you're going to be scalping it. You're going to be cutting it below the 1/3 rule, and you're going to be cutting it down into the stems. You're going to be exposing a lot of brown tissue and potentially cutting off the crown and killing parts of it. So you got to keep it conditioned at that lower height of cut if you want it to be like carpet, like what he has. So he's absolutely 100% correct about that. Mowing is in the injury box. That's injury to the plant. That's abiotic injury, is cutting it. It's the most harmful thing that we do to our turf grass is cut it. So if you're going to cut it all year long with the same blades, don't expect perfection. Keep those blades as sharp as you can get them. If you have to sharpen them, there's a lawn care company in northeast Tampa that when his crew comes off, he has, 7 or 8 trailers, 7 or 8 trucks. When his crew comes off, they drive it straight over to the mechanic. They take off all the blades, and the mechanic puts on the new blades, which was from yesterday, from the blades from the day before that he had already sharpened. So every day when they come in, they clean the mowers and put on sharp blades, and they pull it into the shop and they go home. And then the mechanic sharpens those blades that they just took off for that day and then puts them back on tomorrow. That's how important he thinks it is, and he's dead right. It is important. So Ron Henry is 100% correct. Sharp blades, frequent mowing, right how to cut is critical.
See is people will have a super green lawn as the lawn is tall, and then when they cut it, it turns brown. And a lot of that is just comes down to one, they're either mowing too low or they're not mowing frequently enough. So at my height of cut,
he's right. He's dead right. You're mowing it too low, or you're not mowing it quick enough, or frequently enough. One of those two, probably.
Which is right just over half an inch. With PGR, with plant growth regulator on the lawn, I'm mowing every 3 days.
Well, there you go. He's just said plant growth regulator. He's got it on there. You can just tell there's no way you're going to keep your meter that tight and that low without regular mowing. And probably might be able to do it without a PGR, depending on what hybrid you got, but it's going to be tough to keep it that low and that tight without a PGR.
Every 3 to 4 days is what the lawn takes with growth regulator to be able to stay nice at this height. If you're dealing with like a tall fescue or like a Kentucky bluegrass, those you're gonna need to cut a little bit higher. So regularly mowing your grass, so not like once every 2 weeks, cutting it, every at least once a week, really, and not taking off any more of a third of that upper leaf is gonna go a lot towards keeping your turf green. So we've covered watering, we've covered mowing, and now we're gonna talk about the thing that probably all you guys really care about, which is like what products to use, right?
That's what I care about. You hit that on the head again, Ron. So the watering and mowing, like I said, most people get in the ballpark. I mean, he might be off on this and off on that. I might be off on this and that. But in general, the watering is probably people overwater, but it's okay. They're usually in the ballpark. The mowing, they're in the ballpark. It's when we get to this part of the pyramid, it was when I start to have fun. It's great. See what he says.
So the one thing you'll notice here, I've got 3 different options for fertilizers, because the two key things, the 2 key nutrients that contribute to a greener lawn are making sure your lawn gets enough nitrogen, and then also making sure that it gets enough iron. So
okay, let me just start here, okay? Nitrogen, got it. No problem. 100% agree, okay? When it comes to iron, it's a bit dependent. So if you're spraying out foliar iron, then again, I'm with you. But if you're assuming that the plant is going to turn green as a result of soil uptake or fertilizer that you applied as a granule, the 2 most important elements, in my opinion, are nitrogen and sulfate, sulfur. Those are the 2 that are going to turn the grass green more frequently than not from granular fertilizers. Not potassium, not even phosphorus, unless you have a bona fide phosphorus deficiency, which could happen. I mean, you're more likely to have a phosphorus deficiency than a potassium deficiency in most cases. So it could happen with phosphorus, but it's nitrogen and sulfur. So if you're using ammonium sulfate, you're knocking off 2 birds with 1 stone right there. And if you're using straight urea and you go, well, I have urea, but my sulfate levels are in single digits, and that's a risk, and it is a risk, maybe like 3 at 6 inches, then you can include any form of sulfate as long as it's soluble, like magnesium sulfate or calcium sulfate or potassium sulfate or whatever the case is, because it's not the potassium that's likely causing a result in greening or the magnesium that's resulting in greening. It's actually the sulfate. And I don't know why people overlook that. I guess it's because we didn't have to worry about it in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s because we had so much acid rain coming down. But we cleaned all that up. We don't have those sulfur depositions anymore. And so I would say nitrogen and sulfur, not nitrogen and iron, because you're not going to apply any granular iron, at least from any pragmatic position that's going to turn the grass green. I'll go over all that tonight.
Once you're doing all those things right, let's say you're watering the lawn properly, you are cutting it at the right height with the right equipment regularly, And the next thing that we need to do is making sure the nutrients are where they need to be. So as far as the options I've got up here, I've got a liquid option, a hybrid, which is like a synthetic slow release and quick release option, and then a completely organic option. So the one thing that's consistent about all three of these is they all contain iron. The Brand Supreme Green is really a micronutrient fertilizer, and you'll notice it contains 5% of iron.
Okay, I'm going to show all these labels. I'll let him get through here, and then I guess what I'll do is I'll show these labels all back to back to back. So if you're not seeing the labels on the screen, don't worry about it. I'm going to go over them. I have them all ready to go.
The ProScape from Lebanon Turf, again, it's like that blend. You got 20% nitrogen, and this guy really doesn't contain a ton of iron, but it contains 1% of soluble iron. So this also contains some iron in it.
Okay, so remember ProScape, he said it contains 1% iron. He's pointing that out as a point of value in that particular fertilizer.
And then contender number 3, Milorganite. This is a fertilizer I'm very, I'm a big fan of. This contains 2.5% iron. Now, the thing that's consistent about all these is that all of them are iron in a form that's very easy for the turf to take up.
That's complete BS. There's an episode of Saturday Night Live where Phil Hartman did a commercial called Colon Blow. And there was a commercial in the 1990s about like fiber cereal and how it would help digestion and so forth. And then they did a skit on SNL called Colon Blow. And he goes, how many bowls of your normal cereal would you think it would take to equal the fiber in one bowl of Colon Blow? And what happened was Phil Hartman was sitting in his kitchen, and suddenly a little pile of cereal fills up below him. And he's like, no, it would take 10,000 bowls. And then he's like, no, it would take 30,000 bowls. And the pyramid is so massive that it's like the Great Pyramid of Giza of all this stuff that he's sitting on. That's the equivalent size of BS that Ron Henry is spewing right now on this complete ridiculous video. He just said all of them contain iron in a form available for plant uptake. Okay? Complete nonsense, complete BS. I'm going to explain it in detail exactly why it is, okay? But just because he says it on YouTube and he has a pretty lawn here, I had a lawn in Gainesville that was really, really good. It was a 419 Bermuda lawn. It was good, and it wasn't as good as Ron's lawn. This lawn is, any golf course superintendent would envy this on their tee boxes or their approaches, their fairway. I mean, this is a fantastic lawn. So you can look at it and go, well, clearly the man knows what he's doing. Look at his lawn. Okay? He must know what he's talking about. Don't fall into that trap. Do not fall into that trap. He can be right about A and be completely wrong about B, C, D, and E. Okay? Don't allow that to fool you into believing, being convinced that what he's going to say is true about this stuff. It's not true, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Here, we keep going here.
You'll often hear the term called chelated iron, and what that's really referring to is iron that's pretty much put in a state that's very easy for the grass to absorb. Milorganite technically isn't chelated iron, but because of the way it breaks down, where you're dealing with the microbes once the soil temperature is above 55 degrees, it behaves in many ways like a chelated iron without that extra cost.
That's complete and utter BS. How do you know, Ron? How do you know? How do you know the iron in Milorganite is going to behave the same way as a chelated iron source without having to pay extra for the chelate? How do you even know the iron in Milorganite is ever going to actually enter the plant? Answer me that, because I couldn't figure it out. If you know that answer, Ron, email me and explain it to me, because I could not actually figure that out. It's not easy to actually pull that out because of the form of iron that it's in. It's in an organic form. It's difficult to actually work with that product with the iron in terms of solubility, because it's hard to partition out the effect is what exactly is going on, because it's going to sit there in that organic form, if it is in an organic form at all to begin with, for a very long time. It's going to take a long time to mineralize that out. And when it does mineralize out, the assay is usually completed by that point. I can't run an assay for 4 months. Okay. But you know, Ron, right? You know, it's going to behave very much like a chelate. You made that assertion. That's a positive truth claim right there. And what I'm saying is, I don't know, and I've looked into it, I can't figure it out. The best evidence we have comes from another product called iron humate, in which the iron in that product is in an organic form, just like the one in milorganite. And we can't find anything to be solubilized at all from that product. And I'm going to get into that when we get into the articles. But don't believe this nonsense. It's complete BS.
Both the Brent Supreme Green and the ProScape are those higher quality irons that the grass will take up very, very quickly.
Okay, the BS is getting so thick here, I'm going to have to put on a gas mask or something. It's hard. It's difficult. You have to understand, guys, I'm not neurotypical. I've spent the majority of my professional career studying this particular issue. And I do my best to communicate the evidence to the turfgrass industry to help them. And then we see people like Ron Henry get on here and communicate it in a way that sounds very compelling, and it's complete and utter nonsense. It's very, very frustrating to me. Like I said, I've spent most of my professional career trying to help people understand this, to learn about it myself. And then these goofballs get on here and F everything up. Drives me nuts. Okay, so he just said ProScape is one of the higher end products. Let's take a look at the ProScape label here. ProScape 2005 Mesa product. Now the Mesa actually is. I like the Mesa product. It's a homogenized methylene urea and ammonium sulfate. I'm a fan of that product for sure. I mean, it's a good product to use for an end source. But let's look down here and look at the guaranteed analysis. It's a 2005. The sulfur is 2.3%. The iron is 1%, just like he said. It's the exact same product, 1% iron, okay? But in order to understand this as a consumer, you have to understand how to read these labels. And the percentage in the bag, to me, is only one part of the value of the product. You need to know what percentage in the bag. Got it. 1% iron, 20% nitrogen. Okay, that's important to understand, but it doesn't do anything for me until I get the next part, which is the derived from statement down below. Okay, this derived from is where you make your money. That's when you know, or where you know whether or not you're being conned or not. And in the case of iron, he said, and I can't remember the exact words, something along the lines of, this is the more higher end product. This is the higher end, more valuable product. He said all the sources contain a plant available iron. When it says 1% iron, when you go down here and you see it has urea, ammonium sulfate, methylene urea, muriate of potash, ferric oxide, and ferrous sulfate. This ferric oxide is never going to be available to the plant, at least in any geologic time frame. Like, it's going to sit there forever, essentially. Okay. The iron sulfate will solubilize, and I'm going to talk about iron sulfate as we get into the scientific article tonight. I'm only going to read the conclusions, guys. I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm just going to read the title and the conclusions. Okay. But this is the trick people play. This is the trick blenders play. And that is, it says 1% iron, but notice on here, it doesn't say anything about soluble iron or water soluble iron, nothing like that. So I can't tell you as a consumer how much of this 1% iron comes from iron sulfate and how much comes from iron oxide. It could be 0.9999% iron oxide and 0.00001% from ferrous sulfate. I have no clue. That's a trick blenders play. They put in the bulk of it as a cheap source that will show up as iron on the tag, and they put in a fraction of some other iron source, this case iron sulfate, which is we're going to find out that's also useless, but it is soluble. Okay, so you can look at that bag and go, well, there's iron sulfate in it. You don't know that 99.99% of it comes from iron oxide, and I don't know either. I just know from someone who's blended fertilizers for years and years and years, that's a trick people play. Formulators will play that trick every day. Right now, people are going, superintendents will listen to this right now and going, maybe that's not. Go look at your fertilizer bag. You'll see. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about, unless you had it custom blended and you asked specifically just to have iron sulfate in it. You'll see. It'll have iron oxide, or it'll have iron, what's the other one that people like to put in? Iron sucrate, which is iron oxide. It'll have some other form of iron that has a really, really high percentage, but no solubility. And then it'll have something else in there, just a tiny bit of it in there. So it shows up on the tag and it convinces people that it's iron sulfate, not iron oxide. It's complete BS. So what he's saying is complete and utter nonsense. This is not a valuable iron source at all. Iron oxide and granular applied iron sulfate are in no way agronomically valuable to you as a turfgrass manager. Even iron sulfate, and I'm going to talk about that tonight. Okay? So let me get back to the video.
As far as which of these to use for the faster response, let's just say, a week from now, you're trying to get your turf.
There's only one answer. I don't know what he's going to say. There's only one, because the Brant Supreme Green is a liquid and the other two are granulars. There's only one answer to this, Ron. You started off good, but you had water and mowing height. So I complimented you on those two recommendations because you're right. So please say Brant Supreme Green, because that's the only answer here to this question. Which one's going to respond quicker?
Really, really green, you got some event coming up, then out of those three, the liquid is going to be the fastest.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
You guys have not seen my video on Milorganite. You guys have seen that earlier this season. I filmed an update every 3 to 4 days showing you how quickly Milorganite releases and to get full results from it. And really with Milo, you're looking at about 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks thereabouts for
That's probably around in the ballpark of reality, but the response, the question I would have for Ron is, how do you know that response came from the iron and not the nitrogen in Milorganite? How do you know? Milorganite is a homogenized biosolid. It's impossible to separate the iron from the nitrogen. So if you're going to go out and apply Milorganite and you're going to determine or evaluate which element it comes from, then you have to have a control, which has nothing, and then another control, which has the other element, just iron or just nitrogen. So you're going to have 3 controls out there to separate out the influence of Milorganite from either being nitrogen or from iron. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what I'm talking about. So I don't think he did that.
For you to get the full benefit of it, assuming good soil temperatures. The ProScape is going to be a little bit faster, probably about a week to get good results. And then the liquid option, which again, in this case is the Brant Supreme Green, but I'm going to have some options in the description, some links in the descriptions you can get as other options for this, is going to be like a couple of days. So literally.
Yeah, he's pretty much on spot with all that. I mean, it's going to take a week or two for Milorganite because it's all slow release. It's going to take a little while to start breaking down. The ProScape has some soluble ammonium sulfate and urea in there. It's going to take less than a week, and depending on the time of year. And then the other liquid, you're going to see a response depending on the iron concentration. I'm going to get to the Brant Supreme Green. You can see a response before you even go to bed that night because of the manner in which the iron in that particular product functions in terms of turning it green. And I'm going to show that in a second. But it's not a biological change in the plant. Okay, that's the reason it happens so fast. But that would be from the iron. Anything else in there, the nitrogen, I can't remember what's on the tag. I'm going to get it open in a second. But anything else that's like nitrogen or anything else that has to be taken up, then that would take a day or so to kind of get it up and start kicking in the metabolism in the plant. But any response you would see that day or early the next day would be a response of iron on the leaf surface oxidizing.
Of them, from a standpoint of which one is going to be fastest, you've got liquid, somewhat synthetic, and then completely organic, and the speed at which they release iron nutrients into the lawn is in that order. So very fast, medium fast, and then relatively slow release.
Yeah, he's correct about that, but he's just completely wrong on why it actually results in that response. And this is what I've said before: stay in your lane. He's a salesman. Sell your fertilizer. Stop explaining how it works because you're showing how much of a fool you are. You don't understand any of this clearly. The response from that liquid, it's going to be fast. If it happens that day, it's going to be from iron and manganese. It's not going to be from nitrogen. And if it doesn't happen that day and it happens the next day, then it's going to be probably from the nitrogen. But you're going to have to get that rate up to about 0.2, 0.3 pounds in, something like that, and you would see a response that quick. But the next one, it's not going to come from the iron. The response you're going to get from the mineral fertilizer, the one in the middle, that ProScape, you're going to see a response probably within a week. But it's not going to come from the iron. This is what he's claiming. He's saying, well, the iron in this is going to take a week or so. The iron in the Milorganite is going to take a couple of weeks. You don't know that. It's going to come from the nitrogen in those fertilizers. It's not going to come from the iron. But, Grifters like this don't care why. All they want to know is, can they convince someone to buy it? That's what they care about. They don't want to know whether or not it's true or not. They want to know whether it's true as long as it helps them. If it doesn't help them, then forget about it. But if the truth helps me, then I'll listen to it. In fact, when I was doing all this iron work, I never forget, when I was doing this iron work the last couple of years I was at Florida, a lot of the iron work started to be published and started to come out, and I was touring around Florida and talking about it at different conferences and so forth. And I'd go in and I'd talk to people and say, we want to start removing some of this granular iron from our fertilizer and replacing it with liquid fertilizer. All the liquid fertilizer salesmen loved me. They were like, this is great, because they're making 70, 80 points on that liquid iron. No, the granular fertilizer guys didn't even care because they're not making any money on that granular iron at all. But the truth helped them. So they were all in favor of the truth whenever it's on their side. But whenever it's not on their side, what did Shaddox say? No, let's not invite him. That's what's happened. It's great.
I'm giving you guys the 3 points. I'm going to give you guys a bonus because you guys stuck around towards the end of this video.
Ooh, bonus. Let's hear it, Ron. What's the bonus? Before we go to the bonus, let me do this. Let me open up the other labels because he's starting to go into the other thing. So here's the Brent Supreme Green label. I already showed the Proscape label. And again, the guaranteed analysis is important. It's a 12% nitrogen, 0.5% magnesium, 5% iron, and 1% manganese, okay? And this is a soluble, for those of you who might not know. You're going to melt this into some water and you're going to spray it out. It's a 1200. It's a typical 1200 that you'd buy if you're familiar with any turf products. And you have extremely high probability of turning grass really green with a product like this, assuming you apply it at the right timing, at the right rate. It has 12% nitrogen in it. The magnesium is probably not going to do anything. I'm going to explain that in a minute. The manganese could as a foliar, and the iron probably will as a foliar. And let's look at the derived from ingredients, which is what the important part is. The nitrogen comes from urea, magnesium from magnesium sulfate, iron from iron sulfate, and manganese from manganese sulfate. So I just said the iron sulfate and the iron oxide are useless as granulars. Iron oxide is always useless, but ferrous sulfate is not useful as a granular, but as a liquid it is. And in this product, it has ferrous sulfate and manganese sulfate. Both of these will stain concrete and everything else it touches, but it'll also turn some grass green. So this product, this 1200, is great. It's fantastic. There's 1500s out there. There's all sorts of these sorts of products out there, 1200 and 1500s all over creation. But I would say that the chances of you seeing a response or any value for the money you spend out of magnesium is very low. Manganese is probably also pretty low. But the nitrogen and the iron are right in line. Very good. Okay? So now let's look at milorganite. With milorganite, if you're not familiar with milorganite, it's a biosolid. And it has some varying concentrations, but it's usually a 640, 6% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus. If you go down here to the guaranteed analysis down at the bottom, it's probably a little blurry on the screen, but it's just because the tag is so small here. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Yeah, that's a little better. The guaranteed analysis is 640, and it says 640. It's a 6% nitrogen, 4% P2O5, and then some calcium, 1.2%, and then iron, 2.5%, just like he said. Derived from processed sewage, or you might say derived from biosolids, okay? You don't have the source of the iron. The source of the iron is the sewage sludge. It is the biosolid. So it's bound in an organic form in the actual biosolid particle itself, all right? So in order to get that to release, it has to break down microbially and move into the soil solution. When the iron moves into the soil solution, it is susceptible to oxidation as long as there's dissolved oxygen in the soil solution, which there is dissolved oxygen in every soil solution as long as the soil is arable. If you're growing turf grass, then there's dissolved oxygen in your soil solution, in your water, in your soil. Okay, so it's going to oxidize extremely rapidly unless it is protected by a chelate, not a complex necessarily. Okay. Let me explain this whole mess between complexes and chelates. And I'm going to do that with, I think, this article. think it's this article. Yeah, it's this article right here. So this article right here is entitled, I've talked about it before. I don't even know if I've actually gone over this article or not, or these articles. But this is solubility of iron, manganese, and magnesium sulfates and glucoheptanates in 2 alkaline soils that we wrote a few years ago. But in here, I had a diagram of iron glucoheptanate. So this is the molecule iron glucoheptanate on the screen, and you'll notice the iron molecule is in the center of the complex. On the right side, you'll see all the hydroxyl groups, and on the left side, you'll see all the hydroxyl groups. This is why iron glucoheptanate is a complex. Okay? Iron glucoheptanate is not a chelate because the iron molecule is not protected by a sphere of molecules, essentially, a shell. That's the chelate. And I think in Latin, the term chelate comes from Latin, meaning claw. So if you can envision your hand and the iron molecule being inside your hand, like a claw, the chelates will protect the metal in that particular orientation. But the complexes like this will not. So all chelated molecules are complexed, but not all complex molecules are chelated. And the reason it's important is because when you have the iron centered like this, and you have the hydroxyl groups on one side, on the other side, it is the iron in the middle is more susceptible to being cleaved off here and being exposed to dissolved oxygen in the water, which will react with this iron and form iron oxide. When it's protected in a three-dimensional sense, like it's protected on all sides, if you want to think of it that way, it's less likely to encounter oxygen, to be able to be released and dissolve and interact with dissolved oxygen. And if you look at the molecular structure of EDTA, DTPA, and EDDHA, you'll notice the carbon on those chelates goes up from EDTA to DTPA to EDDHA. In other words, the amount of chelate protecting the iron on the level of EDDHA is substantially greater than the amount on the EDTA. So in other words, you're just putting more and more protection around the iron as you go from EDTA to DTPA to EDDHA. Those are chelates, and they will protect that iron depending on the pH. But this will not. The glucoheptanate will not. How do I know that? Well, when you go down here, you can read this article. I guess I need to go over this article if I haven't done it. I'm sure I have. And just read the conclusions. And it says, iron applied to these soils either as a sulfate or glucoheptanate provided no increase in soluble iron after 1 day of incubation. Additionally, 93% of the applied iron was rendered insoluble within 1 hour. Iron sulfate and iron glucoheptanate, 93% of it was oxidized within 1 hour of soil contact, and all of it was oxidized in the first day. That's how fast this happens. Thus, soil-applied iron sulfate and glucoheptanate is highly questionable and should be avoided. Soluble manganese, which was also in that Brent Supreme Green, declined rapidly after application, but remained above 30% of that applied at 3 weeks. The use of manganese sulfate or manganese glucoheptanate should take into account this rapid reduction in solubility, and plant responses, if any, would probably be greatly reduced beyond 3 weeks. In other words, there was still some solubility of manganese. A lot of it was oxidized, but there was still a little bit there. Okay. Magnesium, however, remains soluble from both magnesium sources for the entire 3 weeks, indicating that magnesium deficient crops may benefit from either soil-applied magnesium sulfate or magnesium glucoheptanate. Neither iron, manganese, or magnesium glucoheptanates resulted in greater soil solubility than sulfates. Therefore, the use of glucoheptanates through soil-applied applications should be avoided if their use increases production costs. It's just as simple as that when it comes to glucoheptanates and sulfates. When it hits the soil, iron sulfate, it's gone. It's toast. As long as there's moisture in that soil, it's gone. Let's look at another article. So this is the solubility of 10 iron fertilizers in 11 North American soils. And you'll notice some authors on here you may know. Dr. Kreuzer, Dr. Miller at North Carolina State, Dr. Gardner up in Ohio, Dr. Gertall, who's now moved on, and Dr. Unruh and Dr. Stewart in Mississippi, and there's all sorts of people on this paper. But let's just read the conclusions. And the title of this paper is Solubility of tin iron fertilizers. If you go through here, first of all, I want to mention that the sources of fertilizers are all here. Here's the humate. Now, this is the closest thing I could come to for milorganite, and this is iron humate. Okay? But we have sulfate, humate, oxide, which was mentioned in the video. And then there's some other ones, polysaccharide. Here's citrate. Okay, I've mentioned citrate before. It is a type of a chelate, but it's not going to maintain solubility very long. It may reduce staining, which I need to show some videos on that I have, but it's not going to increase solubility or prolong solubility for very long in soils at all. Glucoheptanate, and then here's the chelates, IDDHA, EDTA, and DTPA, and EDHA. Okay, so all the chelates we have. And go down here and just read the conclusions. Evidence did not support the hypothesis that iron oxide, iron humate, this is the closest thing I can come to an organic iron source, iron humate, iron glucoheptanate, iron sulfate, and iron polysaccharide increased iron in the soil solution compared with untreated soil. So there was no evidence that any of those iron sources increased iron solubility in the soil. None. Iron citrate and the IDHA, this is not available. Except for in Europe, this IDHA chelate's not even available. If you're in Europe, then you might be able to find some of that. Iron citrate and IDHA increased iron solubility for 1 day in only some soils. But considering the short turnaround, the use of iron citrate and IDHA as a soil-applied iron source is questionable. So in other words, a citrate did increase it for 1 day, but after 1 day, the iron from iron citrate was insoluble. Iron EDTA increased iron solubility in soils with pH less than 7, but did not increase iron solubility in soils greater than pH 7. And then you can read through here that EDHA was, and so forth. They're depending on pH, it depends. Nutrient programs designed with the objective of increasing soluble iron in the soil should consider iron EDDHA as the soil applied iron source, especially when soil pHs exceed 7.9. EDDHA, someone can look it up. One of the members might know off the top of their head. I don't know. But EDDHA is going to cost somewhere between, say, $50,000 and maybe around $80,000 a ton. So almost no one's using it. Okay. But if you have pHs above 7.9, there is no other option to provide iron solubility in soils besides EDDHA. There's no option. Unless you just apply it to the top of the leaf. But if you're going to apply it to the soil, there is no other option besides EDDHA when the soil's pH is greater than 7.9. Okay, and so the oxides, humates, glucoheptanates, sulfates, polysaccharides, there's no solubility, zero. But then the last paper, I'm just going to read real quick and the conclusions. This is St. Augustine grass quality and nutrient uptake following foliar iron, manganese, and magnesium. And I'm just going to read the conclusions. I'm not going to go through this whole paper. And this is what would happen if you spread it out or you sprayed it out on St. Augustine grass. And it says foliar iron increased St. Augustine grass quality and leaf iron concentrations, whereas this study found no supporting evidence for the use of granular iron. Granular magnesium did not result in an increase in turf quality or leaf magnesium concentrations, indicating that granular magnesium is of little value on St. Augustine grass when soil magnesiums exceed 65 parts per million Mehlich-3. Now, the 65 I've mentioned before, that's probably around 20. The only reason I said 65 here is because that's the lowest magnesium I had in the soil. It's probably much, much lower than that before you would ever need to worry about magnesium. I just couldn't say that in this study because the lowest magnesium I had was 65. However, foliar magnesium increased turf quality even in conditions when granular magnesium did not. So foliar magnesium did have a little bit of a blip on a radar. Foliar manganese, listen up here. So I've mentioned this before, manganese, but pay attention here at the very end here. We're almost done here, guys. Foliar manganese resulted in increased leaf tissue manganese concentration, but this rarely corresponded with an increase in turf quality. Granular manganese resulted in either no influence or reduced turf quality when applied in granular form, and thus granular manganese appears to be unwarranted for the use on St. Augustine grass, at least under the conditions of the study. Now, in this study, granular manganese actually reduced turf quality. There may have been some toxicity to granular manganese because you have to apply as a granular higher rates. Foliar manganese didn't really do much, but granular manganese actually reduced it. However, There is extremely good evidence in the literature that when you have a bona fide manganese deficiency, that granular manganese will alleviate that. In this study, it resulted in a toxicity. But this study, the turfgrass might not have been deficient in manganese. Okay. So these three articles are the main reason why I'm saying Ron Henry's completely full of nonsense when it comes to what he's saying about these three products resulting in some sort of greening and some sort of, besides the liquid, because of the iron. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. The iron in that Proscape and that Milorganite is useless unless you're in the business of cleaning off stains from sidewalks and from cart paths. If you're in the business of cleaning off stains, then go apply all this stuff. You'd have a good racket going on. Besides Milorganite's not going to stain. That iron's not going to stain because it's not going to be soluble. But when it comes to the Proscape, that iron sulfate in there, if there's any substantial amount of sulfate in there, it's going to stain concrete. And I'm going to show, if I ever get my act together, which is honestly is probably going to be a year from now because I have this massive project going on right now. It's taking a lot of my time. But if I ever get my act together, I'm going to put together the videos that show the rate of how fast these actually stain concrete. It's extremely fast. Let's finish the video. I don't know if he has much left, but let's finish the video and I'll go back and answer some questions.
The three things to recap. First is proper watering, an inch.
I agree. Proper watering is absolutely critical.
1.5 inches per week for Bermuda. Mowing at the right height with the right equipment.
That checks the injury box for sure. Absolutely.
And then the correct fertilizer. So fertilizer.
Well, the correct fertilizer is important, but you don't have it, Ron. You're trying to hawk iron when you don't know squat about iron. I don't know squat about iron. The iron is ridiculously complex, very, very difficult to understand. It reacts with everything. I think the valence goes up to like 9 or something on iron. Someone should look that up. Usually like the valence on hydrogen is 1, right? And like on calcium is 2. On iron, I think it's like 9. In other words, it can donate and receive electrons all over the place. So it's extremely difficult to understand. So don't sit here and try to act like, we're talking about trying to sell this product from the iron component. Sell it from the nitrogen component, Ron. The nitrogen, except for the liquid iron's fine. But these other two products, they have nitrogen. That's what's going to result in the green grass, not the iron.
That have a good amount of nitrogen, but also contain some iron.
He doesn't know. I admit it does sound very convincing. It's like, it must be iron. Iron turns the grass green. We need a lot of iron. You probably don't need to apply any granular iron ever. But if you want a little greener grass, apply foliar iron in any soluble form at about 1 to 5 pounds of iron per acre. And if you're around anything that you want to keep from staining, avoid iron sulfate like the plague. Okay, you cannot use iron sulfate near anything that you do not want to stain. That would be my recommendation.
You know which one you really need to put down your lawn or how much fertilizer to put down is the soil test. So if you guys aren't...
Jesus. I'm sorry. I gotta be careful. I offend some people when I say that. I'm going to have to rewind that. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know he was going to say that. So how do you know how much you got to put down, which one you got to put down? It's by soil testing. What are you going to soil test on, Ron? You're going to soil test for nitrogen? Iron? Is that what you're going to do? Let's see what he says. I've waited till this is where I'm at the end of the episode. Now I'm finally getting to the part that's really interesting to me. I didn't even know that he said this stuff. Let's check it out. So he said, how do you know? Let's soil test.
Put down your lawn or how much fertilizer to put down is the soil test. So if you guys aren't doing that, that's like a little secret weapon. It's something that everybody should be doing, but not many people do.
Honestly, if I could snap my fingers and have my wish, I would eliminate all soil testing from turf grasses and lawns because it's almost completely useless with the following exceptions: phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, maybe pH, depending on what's going on in your world. And that's about it. Maybe manganese, maybe. I mean, you might have something with magnesium, possibly. But that's about it. For every other use, I would, and except for chemical soil tests, I would just eliminate it completely. I would make it illegal. It's useless. And the ones that he uses are 100% useless. Those are the ones where he's using these ion exchange beads, these My Soil things, Soil Savvy tests. Those are 100% useless. Get rid of those. But there's just so much exploitation of the market by con artists who are trying to sell fertilizers based on soil tests. I'm letting you know now, soil tests have to have two main things. You have to have a correlation between the soil test value and anticipated plant response. You have to have that correlation first. If you don't have that, then I don't even want to talk to you. Okay? It's you. Anything you're going to say beyond that is completely useless to me. You have to at least know if there's a correlation between those two. Then, if you're going to actually start recommending fertilizers, which is what this grifter here on the screen here is doing, you have to have a calibration conducted, which means that you've found a deficient soil and then you've gone and you've applied a fertilizer at different rates and you've calibrated it and you know how much you need to apply to result in a turf response or to alleviate your deficiency. That has almost never been done in turfgrass science. Almost never. Okay, there was some stuff done in like the 80s, some stuff done in the 80s and 90s, but there is almost no information on that on sulfur. There is no information on that on sulfur in the literature, period, on turfgrass, zero. There's almost none in phosphorus except for some that Dr. Soldat's done. There's a little bit with potassium, but not much. So don't sit here and tell me you're going to be able to recommend fertilizer applications based on a soil test, Ron. It's not going to happen. That evidence doesn't exist.
So if you've not gotten a soil test, that's going to tell you like where the deficiencies actually are in your lawn. And it's important because if you're really, really low on nitrogen, you may need to use something that contains a higher percentage of nitrogen than the options that I've listed here. So getting that soil test really only once per season is going to go a long way towards you making an informed decision about like what kind of products you apply to your lawn. So guys, this is what I had for you.
Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, don't do that. And yes, the answer to your question, Chuck, is yes, it worked. Okay. Sorry, Chuck. I was busy on my little rant there. Sorry. Don't say take soil tests just to take soil tests. I'm so tired of saying this. I've been saying this for I don't know how many years. I want to take soil tests. I want to see what the numbers are. I'm just a data guy. I want to see the numbers. It's going to, as long as you're not doing anything with it, then knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. As long as you're not taking action and applying fertilizer based on that, what do I care? But if you're going to start applying phosphorus based on a soil test, you better get your ducks in a row. You're going to start applying nitrogen based on a soil test, iron based on a soil test, according to Ron Henry. Show me anything in the literature that I can have confidence with that a Malic-3 iron of some percentage or parts per million would be correlated with a turf response. Show it to me. I'm a scientist. I'm open-minded. Show it to me. Convince me. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We have no money in turfgrass nutrient work. There's zero. No one. The majority of our money comes from companies usually, or associations. Associations don't fund this type of work. You can go talk to any doctor that's in my world. It is not easy to get people to work on this work, to fund this work. They're funding bill bug research and they're funding disease research and weed control research, which is all very important, But when it comes to soil testing, people just assume that they're all correct. They're not correct. And you're out there applying fertilizer, phosphorus, and nitrogen based upon a soil test thinking that it's correct. I don't think that the majority of the people, at least the funders, realize that there's even a problem. So why would they throw money at trying to solve it when they don't even know that one exists? So soil testing is greatly overvalued, in my opinion. There's a few things you can use it for. Phosphorus, potassium, pH, like I mentioned, there's a few things you can use it for. But I wouldn't go out there and say, yeah, I'm going to soil test because Ron Henry said, and I'm going to use his soil savvy test or whatever that fraudulent test is. I'm going to base my fertilizer applications based upon that. It's complete hogwash. It's nonsense. It's driving me nuts. Let's get Ron's face off the screen here. All right, let me go back and answer some questions if I can. I don't know how far back I got to go, but had a huge crowd here tonight, so there's a lot of chat. So I really appreciate it. Don't forget there's a turf thought at the end. Hang around for the turf thought after the questions get answered if I can get to them. Oh, that's nice, Mitch. I don't know if that's true. Mitch said here, he says, Pete from GCI is changing his approach to lawn care with all this info. He said, I'm going back to the basics, what I started doing. I don't know if he got that from me or not, if he got it from someone else. I don't know, but I don't mind practicing the 360 dunks, in the fancy catches and the, all these, behind the back passes. I don't mind practicing that stuff, but it doesn't make a lick of difference if you don't have the fundamentals figured out first. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to water, light, temperature, and injury. Get the fundamentals first. And if you want to fidget with this stuff, fidget with humic acids and sea kelp and all this other stuff, I wouldn't do it because I don't really care about my lawn that much. But if you have everything dialed in and got it figured out and you want to fidget with that stuff, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. It's probably not going to help that much, but you have everything figured out. You got everything, perfectly aligned the way you want it, and you want to go play with some stuff, go play with some stuff. But get the basics first. So that's a nice comment, Mitch. If that's true, I would like to know that, if I don't know Pete. I know I had him, he was on Tinfoil Turfgrass years ago, but if he's going back and realizing that maybe he kind of got off in left field and he's going back to the basics, that's a good thing. Whether he got it from me or not is irrelevant. It's a good thing. And that's one thing about me. I don't care who gets there, who got you there first. I'm not in a competition. What I care about is that we get there together. I don't care who leads it. It can be Elevated Landscapes. It can be Turf Therapy. It can be the guys at the Grass Factory. It can be your Turfgrass Extension agent. It can be a professor. It can be anybody. Whoever helps you get there, let's just get there. It doesn't have to be me. So that's a good comment. Thank you. Let me answer some questions from the members. I know that as the members, they kind of get priority. So the question, I may have answered this question. I'm sorry, Mike. It's been a little while since I looked at the chat. Mike Conroy says, question, if EDDHA is the only source for pH above 7.9, will it work for all pH levels lower as well? Yes, it will. If you're going to spray out iron and you're going to intentionally leave it on the leaf surface, meaning you're not going to water it in, then the chelate's irrelevant. Don't spend the money on it because iron sulfate will give you the response there. The result is from staining the leaf, right? So EDDHA, if you're going to do that, then that would be more of a soil sort of application, right? So you don't need to spend that extra money if you're going to intentionally leave it on the leaf surface and let it dry and not water it in. But if you're going to water it in and the pH is 8 or higher, then you need EDDHA. And if it's lower, you can use EDDHA. It's fine. It's just as you get lower, the iron tends to stay more soluble in solution as the pH gets lower. And so you wouldn't necessarily need a very expensive chelate like EDDHA. You can go with an EDTA. That's much, much less expensive. As long as the pH is like below 7, then EDTA will be the chelate that will do the same effect as EDDHA as long as it's below 7. But if you just want one shot, I'm going to go buy one product. I don't care what my pH is. I don't even need to know it because I have this product. It would be EDDHA, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. Extremely, extremely expensive. It usually comes in little 1 pound bags or 5 pound bags, and it's extremely expensive. But that 1 5 pound will last you a lifetime. It don't, unless you have an acre of grass or something, it'll last you a long time. Good question there. So Bill Cosby says, how does water pH affect the availability of the iron in a solution that you're spraying? That's an excellent question. And water pH does have a very profound effect on it. If the pH at neutral has the same concentration of hydrogen ions as it has hydroxyl ions, so hydrogen being positively charged, hydroxyl is being negatively charged, and with the oxygen. So I'm not a solution chemist, okay? But if you're going to be spraying it out and you happen to be dealing with waters that are extremely high, you're going to want a high pH, like say 8 or something, or 7.5 or 8. Then you're probably going to want to buffer that pH of that solution down closer to neutral or even slightly acidic, because the acidic water, the acidic solution is going to help keep that iron in solution. Now, if you're dealing with chelate, then it doesn't matter. If it's chelated in solution, then it doesn't really make a difference. But if it's iron sulfate and you have high pH water, I'm not a solution chemist, but I would assume that it would be more likely to precipitate out as iron oxide as you get it into the higher pHs, and more likely to remain soluble at the lower pHs in the spray solution. Okay, that'd be my answer to that, and I would be wide open to accepting where I'm wrong on that if there was something else. Because I'm not a solution chemist, so I don't know as much as I should know about that. Good question. Yeah, and Cody M says, to clarify, EDDHA is the best form. Yeah, there's other chelates that you can come across. Like it'll say like H-EDDHA or H-DTPA. There's other chelates, that might be less expensive. But if there's only 3 chelates that have been tested and confirmed to be valuable in turfgrass research in terms of soil application, and that is EDDHA, DTPA, and EDTA. Those are the 3 that have been tested in turfgrass systems as soil applications. It's a different world when you spray it out. When you spray it out and you just leave it on the leaf surface, it doesn't matter. But in the soil, those are the 3 you want to stay with. And EDDHA of those 3 is the best form. Yeah, extremely expensive, and you really only need to use it once you get above like pH 7 anyway. So, but if you're above pH 7, that's where it's most likely to see iron deficiencies because iron's being precipitated out of solution at those higher pHs. For foliar, but expensive. And below that would be which? I must have missed that, Cody. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Sorry. Yeah, so Cody M, I mean, I don't know. The question is, I've been using ferrous sulfate with ammonium sulfate, and it's been working, but the staining is a problem, so I've been looking for the best chelated source without wasting money. So I don't know, quote unquote, the best, in my opinion, what you need is the least expensive iron source that would not result in staining as a soluble. That would be my definition of the best in your situation. I suspect it's probably iron citrate. I suspect. I don't know. Glucoheptanate will still stain. It's just not as bad as iron sulfate. So there can be some value to those complex iron sources like citrate and glucoheptanate. There can be some value in terms of reducing staining. You just want to see from your local supplier which one they have and which one's the least expensive per, when I say expensive, I mean least expensive like per acre of application or per pound of iron per acre or something like that, not per jug. Yeah, so Chris rules it. For the most part, you're right. Yes. So take note, any soluble form of iron is fine for foliar applied iron. Yes. Soil pH does not matter. Chelation does not matter. Yes, that's correct. If you're going to stick it on the leaf, it doesn't matter what the soil pH is. It doesn't matter what the chelation is. Yes, yes. Sorry, I'm catching up on a lot of these late comments. Sorry. Turf thought coming up in a few minutes here if I can get through these. Having to go back through the chat. I don't know what you really mean by that, Eric, but Eric Ligness says the soil test is like the polygraph for law enforcement. It's called a test, but that's as far as it goes, not a soil truth. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could sit here in front of you and say, yes, this is exactly how you should use soil tests, and this is exactly, we have 100% confidence, and this is what the number is. I wish I could tell you that, but the reality is we have no funding. Soil scientists don't have funding to investigate these. We can't just do it, for free. Although I did a lot of it for free until this channel started up and started supporting it. But researchers get tenure from grants, grad students, publications, and if you're not paying for the research, there's very few people that are just going to, magnanimously just start doing the research for free. So it's unfortunate. We just don't have, no one's funding the work. That's sad. Big Jack 79. I've never bought into soil test. I'm in North Texas with clay, soil, and Tinfoil 419. I only use urea and ammonium sulfate, liquid iron, and PGR, and my yard is top notch. Bermuda doesn't care. That's about as efficient as a program you're probably ever going to come up with, Big Jack. I mean, everybody has a little bit different scenario and different ways they like to cut that cake, but urea, ammonium sulfate, liquid iron, and the PGR, that's pretty good. That's about as efficient as you're going to come up with. Unless you have a deficiency, that's what I would stay with. Yeah, it's a pretty good program. Man, there's so many things. So much. Thanks for the chat tonight, guys. Grizzman says, use citric acid with iron with water at 7.6. Yeah, see, I don't, I'm sorry, Grizzman, but I don't know. I'm not a solution chemist. I don't know, at what point iron citrate would be useful or not useful in solution, in a spray solution. any answer I gave, I'm afraid people would take as truth and just say, well, but I just don't know. So I can't answer that question. The solution chemistry is a whole nother world, and I don't know a lot about that. Yeah. Yeah, so Upper 510 says, hello, Dr. T. I was thinking about some EDTA iron. It's derived from iron monosodium ethylene dimethylene triacetate. Yes. Is this what we should be looking for when you buy iron? Yes. So that long drawn out thing is EDTA. Ethylene diamine tetraacetate. That's EDTA, yeah. So anything pH less than 7, that would be a product that you'd want to use for soils. Remember, when the pH on the soil goes above 7, EDTA is useless, completely useless. It'll oxidize out in only a matter of hours. And so that's the disadvantage to the cheaper chelate like EDTA. It doesn't have the ability to withstand the attack, if you will, of dissolved oxygen in the soil when the pH is above 7. Yeah, so Chris Wells, you didn't know glucoheptanate stains. The Lisco product is glucoheptanate. Yeah, okay, let me explain that. I'm afraid I didn't explain it clearly enough. Glucoheptanate will stain. However, when you're a scientist, you do some crazy things. Like I'm not going to apply iron at the labeled rate that you might apply. I might apply it at 2x or 4x because I'm going to assume, okay, well, what happens if the applicator messes up and they apply it one way on the swell between the yard and the sidewalk, and then their spray rig is too small or too big, and they have to come back the other way and they overlap it. So I want to know, like, what's my risk tolerance? How safe is this? And so I'll do a 2x or a 4x, or sometimes I'll include a 10x just to make sure, like, what is the limit where I can tell the end user that you're safe within this limit. And with glucoheptanate, it is quite high. I mean, it's not like sulfate will stain just almost instantaneously. Glucoheptanate, you kind of got to get the rate up a little higher, or you have to do sequential applications over and over. But it will eventually stain concrete. It will. And I've shown that photo on the screen before where I have all those pavers out, and I've shown the different iron sources, and the iron sulfate was the worst, but the one next to it was a little stained, and that was glucoheptanate. So I'm not saying it's, we need to go out and take all the glucoheptanate out because Shaddox says it stains. It's going to stain, but it's going to be less severe. And it's going to take repeated applications probably for anybody to actually see that. Okay. Jonathan Tiernan says to Big Jack, some of the best golf courses in the world do exactly that. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just urea, ammonium sulfate, some iron, and some PGR. It's pretty simple. Chuck says, yeah, excellent review and Q&A. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. All right, guys, so I'll be back for the members only show on Monday. I think Monday is a normal day for the rest of the week. Have a good week. I've been releasing short little videos, so look forward to those. If you want to listen to this on a podcast, I try to release the podcast every Tuesday morning and Thursday morning. I didn't do that this week, but I'll try to do it again. The one from Monday will be released tomorrow morning, and then this one will be released on Thursday or Friday morning. And please like and subscribe to the video and consider being a member if you want to support Turfgrass Research. All right, guys, here's a turf thought for the day. Have a great week. Thanks for being here. Bye. And now, Turf Thoughts by Ken Corley. When I watered my lawn, I noticed some of the water would run off and not go into the soil. Concerned, I called the largest lawn care company in the world to help. The salesman for Fall Screen came out and informed me of a service they provide called liquid aeration. He said it would break up soil compaction by breaking down the soil particles, which create space for air, water, and nutrients. He said liquid aeration would cure my compaction problem without leaving behind the mess you see with traditional core aeration. I thought, why not give it a shot? After all, they are the largest lawn care company in the world, so their services must work. They treated my lawn 3 times with liquid aeration. Although I did not notice a difference in my lawn, I did notice a difference on the salesman's Facebook page. He posted some vacation pictures of him boozing it up on a beach in Mexico. I thought, I think the liquid he is drinking would have been better for my lawn than the liquid he applied.